The Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Alexander. Book 2, The Black Cauldron. Chapter 15, The Black Crochan.
Farewell, my owlets,
Ordu said, turning toward the cottage.
Unfortunately, you couldn't strike a bargain with us, but that too is the way things are. Flutter home to your nest and give all our love to little Dalbin.
Wait, Taran called and strode after her. Ilanwe, realizing his intent, cried out in protest and caught his arm. Gently, Taran put her aside. Ordu stopped and looked back at him. There is one more thing, Taran said in a low voice. He stiffened and took a deep breath. The brooch I wear, the gift of Adaon, son of Taliesin.
Brooch?
Said Ordu, eyeing him curiously.
A brooch indeed? Yes, that might be more interesting. Just the thing, perhaps. You should have mentioned it sooner.
Taran lifted his head, and his eyes met Ordu's. For that instant, it seemed to him they were quite alone. He raised his hand slowly to his throat and felt the power of the brooch working within him. You have been toying with us, Ordu, he whispered. You saw that I wore Adaon's clasp from the moment we came here. You knew it for what it was.
Does that matter?
Ordu replied.
It is still your choice whether you will bargain with it. Yes, we know the brooch well. Menwe, son of Tengwad, first of the bards, fashioned it long ago.
You could have slain us, Taran murmured, and taken the clasp. Ordu smiled sadly.
Do you not understand, poor chicken? Like knowledge, truth, and love themselves, the clasp must be given willingly or its power is broken. And it is indeed filled with power. This too you must understand. For Menwe the bard cast a mighty spell on it and filled it with dreams, wisdom, and vision. With such a clasp, a duckling could win much glory and honor. Who can tell? He might rival all the heroes of Prydain, even Gwydion, Prince of Dawn. Think carefully, duckling,
Ordu said.
Once given up, it shall not come to you again. Will you exchange it for an evil cauldron you intend only to destroy?
As he held the brooch, Taran recalled with bitter clarity the joys of sight and scent, of dewdrops on a spider web, his rescue of the companions from the rockfall, of Gurgi praising his wisdom and admiring eyes of Ilanwe, and Adaon who had entrusted the brooch to him. Once more there came to him the pride of strength and knowledge. At his feet, the ugly cauldron seemed to mock him. Taran nodded, barely able to speak. Yes, he said heavily, this shall be my bargain. Slowly, he undid the clasp at his throat. As he dropped the bit of iron into Ordu's outstretched hand, it was as though a light flickered and died in his heart, and he nearly cried out with the anguish of it.
Done, my chicken,
Ordu cried.
The brooch for the Crochan.
About him, the companions stood in silence and dismay. Taran's hands clenched. The Crochan is ours, he said, looking Ordu full in the face. Is this not so? It is ours to do with as we please.
Why, of course, dear fledgling,
Ordu said.
We never break a bargain. It's yours entirely, no question of it.
In your stables, Taran said, I saw hammers and iron bars. Will you grant us the use of them? Or, he added bitterly, must we pay still another price?
Use them by all means, replied Ordu. We'll count that as part of the bargain, for you are a bold chicken, we must admit.
Taran led the companions to the stable, and there he paused. I understand what you were all trying to do, he said quietly, taking their hands in turn. Each of you would have given what you treasured most for my sake. I'm glad Ordu didn't take your harp, Fluider, he added. I know how unhappy you'd be without your music, even more than I without my brooch. And Gurgi, you should never have tried to sacrifice your food on my account. And Ilanwe, your ring and your bauble are much too useful and beautiful to exchange for an ugly Crochan. All these things, Taran said, "are doubly precious now, and so are you, the best of true comrades." He seized a heavy hammer that was leaning against the wall. "Come now, friends, we have a task to finish." Armed with iron bars and sledges, the companions hurried back to the cottage, and while the enchantresses looked on curiously, Taran raised his hammer. With all his strength, he brought it down on the Crochan. The hammer rebounded. The cauldron rang like a deep bell of doom, but remained undented. With a cry of anger, Taran struck again. The bard Nylonwe added a fury of blows, while Gurgi belabored the cauldron with an iron bar. Despite their efforts, the cauldron showed not the slightest damage. Drenched and exhausted, Taran leaned on his hammer and wiped his streaming face.
You should have told us, my goslings, what you intended.
Ordu called.
You can't do that to the Crochan, you know.
"The cauldron belongs to us," retorted Nylonwe. "Taran has paid more than enough. It's our business if we want to smash it."
Naturally,
replied Ordu.
"And you're quite welcome to hammer and kick it from now until the birds start nesting again. But my silly goslings, you'll never destroy the Crochan that way. Goodness, no, you're going at it all wrong."
Gurgi, about to crawl inside the Crochan and attack it from within, stopped to listen while Ordu continued.
"Since the Crochan is yours,"
she said,
"you're entitled to know how to dispose of it. There's only one way, though very simple and neat it is."
"Then tell us," Taran cried, "so that we may put an end to the evil thing."
"A living person must climb into it,"
Ordu said.
"When he does, the Crochan will shatter. But,"
she added,
"there's only one disagreeable thing about that. The poor duckling who climbs in will never climb out again alive."
With a yelp of terror, Gurgi sprang from the cauldron and scuttled to a safe distance, where he furiously brandished his iron bar and shook his fist at the Crochan.
"Yes,"
said Ordu with a smile.
"that's the way of it. The Crochan only cost you a brooch, but it will cost a life to destroy it. Not only that, but whoever gives up his life on the Crochan must give it willingly, knowing full well what he does. And now, my chickens,"
she went on,
"we must really say farewell. Orgok is dreadfully sleepy. You had us up so early, you know. Farewell, farewell."
She waved a hand, and with the other enchantresses turned to enter the cottage. "Stop!" Taran shouted. "Tell us, is there no other way?" He ran to the doorway. Ordu's head popped out for an instant.
"None whatever, my chicken,"
she said, and for the first time there was a hint of pity in her voice. The door snapped shut in Taran's face. He pounded in vain. No further reply came from the enchantresses, and even the window suddenly darkened with an impenetrable black fog.
"When Ordu and her friends say farewell,"
remarked the bard,
"they mean it. I doubt we shall see them again."
He brightened.
"And that's the most cheerful piece of news I've had this morning."
Taran wearily dropped his hammer to the ground. "Surely there must be something else we can do. Though we cannot destroy the Crochan, we dare not part with it."
"Hide it,"
suggested Fluider.
"Bury it, and I should say as soon as possible. You can be quite certain we won't find anyone eager to jump into the thing and break it for us."
Taran shook his head. "No, we cannot hide it. Sooner or later, Arn would find it, and all our efforts would have been useless. Dalbin will know," he went on. "He alone has the wisdom to deal with the cauldron. Gwydion himself planned to bring the Crochan to Caer Dalbin. Now that must be our task." Fluider nodded.
"I suppose that's the only safe thing, but it's a cumbersome beast. I don't see the four of us lugging it along some of those mountain trails."
In front of the silent cottage, the companions led out Leluger and Melenlis and lashed the cauldron between the two steeds. Gurgi and Nylonwe guided the heavily laden horses, while Taran and the bard walked, one in front, one behind, to steady the Crochan. Though eager to be gone from Ordu's cottage, Taran did not dare venture across the marshes of Morva again. Instead, he determined the companions would travel some distance from the edges of the swamp, keeping to solid ground and following a path half circling the bog until they reached the moors. "It's longer," Taran said, "but the marshes are too treacherous. Last time, Adeon's brooch guided me. Now," he added with a sigh, "I am afraid I'd lead us to the same fate as the huntsman."
That's a rather good idea,
cried the bard.
"Not for us,"
He added quickly.
"For the Crochan. Sink the beastly pot in the quicksand."
"No, thank you," answered Ilanwe. "By the time we found quicksand, we'd be sinking along with the Crochan. If you're tired, we can change off and you can lead Melendless."
"Not at all, not at all,"
grunted Fluider.
"It's not as heavy as all that. In fact, I find the exercise bracing, quite invigorating. A flam never flags."
At this, a harp string broke, but the bard gave it no heed, busy as he was in holding his side of the swaying cauldron. Taran trudged in silence, speaking only to call directions to Ilanwe and Gurgi. They continued with few moments of rest throughout the day. Nevertheless, by sunset, Taran realized they had covered only a little distance and had barely reached the broad moorlands. He was aware, too, of his own fatigue, heavy as the Crochan itself, a weariness he had never noticed while he had worn Adeon's brooch. They camped on an open heath, cold and barren, shrouded with mist drifting from the marshes of Morva. There they unroped the Crochan for the night, took it off the tired horses, and Gurgi brought out food from the wallet. After the meal, Fluider's spirits revived. Although shivering in the chill and dampness, the bard put his harp to his shoulder and attempted to cheer the companions with a merry song. Taran, usually eager to listen to the bard's music, sat apart, gloomily watching the cauldron. After a time, Ilanwe drew near and put her hand on his shoulder. "I realize it's no consolation to you," she said, "but if you look at it in one way, you didn't give up a thing to the enchantresses, not really. You did exchange the clasp and everything that went along with it, but don't you see, all those things came from the clasp itself. They weren't inside of you. I think," she added, "it would have been much worse giving up a summer day. That's part of you, I mean. I know I wouldn't want to give up a single one of mine, or even a winter day for the matter of that. So when you come right down to it, Ordu didn't take anything from you. Why, you're still yourself, and you can't deny that." "Yes," Taran answered, "I am still only an assistant pig keeper. I should have known that anything else was too good to last." "That may be true," said Ilanwe. "But as far as being an assistant pig keeper is concerned, I think you're a perfectly marvelous one. Believe me, there's no question in my mind you're the best assistant pig keeper in all Prydain. How many others there are, I'm sure I don't know, but that's quite beside the point. And I doubt a single one of them would have done what you did." "I could not have done otherwise," Taran said. "Not if we were to gain the cauldron. Ordu said they were interested in things as they are," he went on. "I believe now they are concerned with things as they must be. Adeon knew there was a destiny laid on him," Taran continued, turning to Ilanwe, his voice growing firmer. And he did not turn away from it, though it cost him his life. "Very well," he declared. "If there is a destiny laid on me, I shall face it. I hope only that I may face it as well as Adeon did his." "But don't forget," added Ilanwe, "no matter what else happens, you won the cauldron for Gwydion and Dalbin and all of us. That's one thing nobody can take away from you. Why, for that alone, you have every reason to be proud." Taran nodded. "Yes, this much I have done." He said no more, and Ilanwe quietly left him there. For long after the others had gone to sleep, Taran sat staring at the Crochan. He thought carefully over all Ilanwe had told him. His despair lightened a little, and pride stirred within him. Soon the cauldron would be in Gwydion's hands, and the long task ended. "This much I have done," Taran repeated to himself. A new strength budded in his heart. Nevertheless, as the wind moaned across the heath and the Crochan loomed before him like an iron shadow, he thought once again of the brooch, and he buried his face in his hands and wept.